Where do we begin with Nancy? We'll start with her title, and then we'll go from there. Nancy is Executive Secretary for Legislation, Appointments, and Policy for Governor Jerry Brown. That's her official title. She is a veteran of the Clinton-Gore administration. She was an energy advisor to Governor Gray Davis. She was a senior vice president at PG&E. Those are just a few of the highlights in the Nancy McFadden life reel. But all of you in this room who know Nancy know that this title hardly does justice to the influence and importance that she has inside the horseshoe, particularly in this very lean administration that Governor Brown runs. She has the governor's ear and more than a few legislators' ears on the most important issues facing our state. And for the next hour or so, she's ours, and we're very grateful. So Nancy, thanks for joining us at She Shares. And there's so many places we could start. We like to talk about people's lives, but in this case, I want to talk a little bit about the news. And that is that Governor Brown, when he's not busy smacking down Chris Christie, has been very, well, tell me what to hear about that. But he has been very, staking a huge bet on the passage of Proposition 30, his tax initiative, which would boost the sales tax, as many of you know, and raise taxes on high earners in order to fund education and public safety. It looks like it's polling okay, but we know how these things go. And I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about why this is so important to the governor and how you're going to get this thing over the finish line.
Well, nothing like starting with an easy one. Whoops, sorry about that. And let me say, first of all, thank you. I really am just honored and delighted to, A, have an opportunity to see so many friends and just amazing women of Sacramento. And I love this She Shares program so much. It combines so many things I love: women, smart women, paying forward to younger women, and I love Karen Breslaw, and we're so lucky here in Sacramento to have you. Karen is like a really big deal. I remember when I was in Washington, and many of us here, Karen Skelton and others, when Karen Breslaw called, she was at Newsweek, it was like the top reporter calling. It was an incredible big deal. And it's one of the things I actually love about Sacramento, because Sacramento, I think, has become a magnet for like really great women who have come here for so many different reasons. Anyway, I wanted to say that.
Whether it were true, now go on.
It is true. Okay, so now Prop 30, which is important, but I wanted to get that out, and I want to also explain that I'm not paying disrespect, and we can talk about my tennis shoes later. Prop 30 is a really big deal. As most people know, Jerry Brown, from the moment he started running for governor to the moment he was elected governor to the moment he was inaugurated as governor, knew that the top item, the top list on the agenda was trying to right the fiscal ship of this state, which was $26 billion in debt when he took over, which causes all kinds of problems, not only for the programs and the services that the state government provides that lots of people like to deride, but it's about education, both elementary and secondary, but also our colleges and universities, and taking care of the most vulnerable, and transportation, and so many other things. We took the bull by the horns last year and tried to right the ship as much as we could. And we brought the deficit down quite a bit. We could not get the Republicans to agree to support a balanced approach, which we thought, and the governor felt strongly, was necessary, which was doing a lot of cuts, but also having some kind of increased revenue, because the reason that we have a deficit is not just because of spending. It's because we've taken out of the revenue sources of California certain things that we had, like the vehicle license fee that the previous governor got rid of in a second, which was $7 billion. And where are we right now? We're about $7 billion in debt. So we couldn't get it done last year in terms of getting revenue that we thought we needed in terms of a balanced approach. We did the best we could, a really significant budget last year in terms of real budget cuts and real reform, like correctional realignment. But we didn't get the job done. And he made the judgment this year that it didn't make any sense to put the state at risk to try again through the legislative process, to get to the end of the legislative process and not end up short. And so we went independently to put something on the ballot. And he has thrown himself into this, crafting a ballot measure, a tax measure that he thought not only did the job in terms of helping us solve the budget problem that we've got, but protect the top priority in his mind, education, but also was something that he could convince the voters, he thought, if everything went right, to pass. And that was the combination of things that went into his calculus. And he has thrown himself into this. We are working very hard to do the right things in government, but he's also raising the money, and he's sort of a single force, joined now by lots of partners to try to get this thing passed. It is going to be close. It is a resilient initiative because I think people do understand that the state is in need. People have doubts and distrust about government, and people don't like taxes. But there's something about a resiliency here that is keeping us above 50%, and we're just going to fight every day between now and the election to try to get this thing passed because the state needs it to be passed. No one has another solution. This is it, and if it doesn't pass, we are going to be in a world of hurt.
So nobody likes taxes, yet it seems like only in California could you end up with not one but 3 tax measures on the ballot. So how do you persuade voters? Should they be voting for all 3 of these? Should they vote for the governor's measure? What's the strategy?
Well, of course, it would have been our preference to have a nice, clean ballot, and we did what we could, and we could have had 4, but we got one of them off. And one of those is really about closing a tax loophole, and I think that people will see that, and it really is in a different category. We really are going to focus on our measure because we think our measure is the only one that actually protects education from the cuts that are coming if it doesn't pass, and provides a real clear pathway to balancing the budget. And we hope voters will be able to make the right judgment on what's best for the whole state, and we think ours is. And we're going to focus on ours and try not to get distracted by the others.
Okay. So, Nancy, I want to back up a little bit and get to the rather amazing story of how you ended up working in a White House, working at the highest levels of government, working in the horseshoe here at Governor Brown's and Governor Davis's office. You didn't come from a big political family. You were born in Wilmington, Delaware, Joe Biden's hometown. Your mom was a nurse. Your parents were both nurses. You went to Philadelphia. But you had fairly humble circumstances, right? Your family.
Yeah, I was raised for the most part by a single mom who was a nurse and devoted herself to her 2 kids and being a wonderful nurse. And but yeah, we didn't have a lot of money. We until I bought my house, I'd never lived in a house that was owned. I always lived in a rental. But yes, I didn't have people who knew politics or law. I went to law school. I didn't have lawyers in my family, but I had a mother who, believed in her children and wanted both of us to be able to do whatever it was that we wanted to do. And there's a power in having somebody believe in you.
So what drove you into this world of politics? Or lured you or chased you? Or?
All of us, I mean, every woman in this room gets that question at some point about how did you end up where you are? and it's a combination of passion and luck, you know, and detours. I thought I was going to be a courtroom litigator, and had some interest in politics, but didn't really think I would be in government and in politics. That wasn't necessarily what I thought. But you know, you take chances and detours. I was practicing law, and I was in a law firm with some really amazing people. Warren Christopher was one of the partners in the law firm. William Coleman, who was the first African-American Supreme Court clerk and argued Brown v. Board with Thurgood Marshall. And both of them believed very strongly that if you had any interest in public service, that you should have a career that went in and out of the private sector and the public sector, and both of them did. So they were real mentors in a way of showing that, and both of them encouraged me. And Warren Christopher in particular said to me that if I was going to stay in Washington and practice law and be involved in politics and government and law, that I should work on a presidential campaign, that was something that I should do. And I had never worked on one. Many people that I was in Little Rock with, or friends of mine like Karen, had worked on other presidential campaigns, but I hadn't. And so, you know, I was very lucky. My first one, lots of people were in the fields and lost a number of presidential campaigns, and the first one I worked on, we won.
So in '92, there you were working for for Clinton, and Jerry Brown was kind of in the scene there early on. So what'd you think?
Well, I have these sort of Jerry Brown moments. When I was in college, actually, he was running for re-election as governor. I think that's the first election that I voted in. And I helped to do a rally for Jerry Brown at San Jose State. And so as one of the organizers, I got to meet him. And you can imagine how excited you are as a college student to meet the governor, especially Jerry Brown, because he had that tremendous cool factor. And I remember distinctly, I've never forgotten, he said to me, you know, what people do in those situations. So, you know, what are you studying? And I very proudly said, political science. And he said, isn't that boring? And I never forgot that. And I actually ended up getting a double major of English and political science. And I think it's because of Jerry Brown. So then in '92, when he was running for president against Clinton, I thought he was crazy. Here, this person who I was so proud of Jerry Brown. I thought he was such a great governor. And then I thought he was a total wacko when he was running for president. Whoops, sorry. And in fact, in the documentary The War Room, about the Clinton campaign, I have a little shot in that, and I'm screaming at something, and the moment is actually when we are trying to shut down the Let Jerry Speak rally on the floor of the convention, which he knows.
So do you guys like to reminisce a lot about?
No, he doesn't. He has no memory of me or that at all. But he, you know, he takes his little digs, and I take my little digs right back at. So it is a wonderful full circle here for me. It really, it's a great full circle.
And we've been jumping around a little bit, but I want to talk about you graduated from San Jose State. You went back east to the University of Virginia to law school. And how did that change your life?
Well, I think going to law school for me, and especially leaving California for a while and going to a place like the University of Virginia, which is a wonderful law school, a beautiful place, kind of a closed place in some ways, gave me kind of a college experience that I hadn't had in college, because San Jose State is this huge commuter college, and I was doing politics and other things, studying and working. And in law school, I just went to law school. I had student loans and went to law school. I didn't work except in the summers at a law firm. So for me, it was this great time of kind of, throwing myself into law school, wanting to do really well. Being around a lot of people who were not the people that I had grown up with. There were only a few Californians in my class. A lot of people who had gone to prep school. And to me, I didn't know what a prep school was really, but there were lots of people who went to prep school in my law school class. So I got a feel for a whole different kind of person. And then I think just getting a law degree and making it through law school gave me a confidence that I think I didn't really have prior to that, because that's a big accomplishment, and those of you who are lawyers know, or others who've done other kinds of masters or whatever, that's a big deal, and I thought it was to get through law school and then to pass the California bar. So
First try?
first try.
All right.
First try. So.
You mentioned...
Although some of the best lawyers are ones who actually didn't
Get on the
pass the
fourth try.
California bar in the first try.
You've worked for some amazing men, politicians. You mentioned Warren Christopher, who I covered as Secretary of State. What a distinguished, talented, humble
Very
person.
much so. Yes.
It was great to watch him in action as Secretary of State. You also worked for Bill Clinton, for Al Gore, for Webb Hubbell, for Rodney Slater at the Department of Transportation. And I'm curious, just given the panoply...
And Janet Reno.
And Janet Reno.
We've got a woman in there.
Thank you. Sorry. But just given this panoply of people you've worked with, how does Jerry Brown stack up?
Let's see. Well, he actually fits in with all of them in this respect, in that I have had the privilege of working for people that I respect, and I respect him, and all with very different strengths, very different idiosyncrasies, but committed to doing the right thing, and very smart, all of those people, whip smart, in different ways, but all very, very smart. And the one difference, except for maybe Janet Reno, is that Jerry Brown right now is in a kind of moment. His Buddhist background is coming out. He's sort of in a Zen moment, in that it's the moment, and it's not about the next thing. It is really about this time and governing and trying to do something now. And he, as he says, he's not looking east anymore. And so that might be a difference between most of the others, except for Reno.
I think for a lot of people, Jerry Brown, although he's been on the public stage for 50 years at this point, I mean, he is still an enigma to a lot of people. What have you learned about him by working for him that maybe the rest of us haven't figured out?
He has an amazing memory, first of all. He remembers his second grade nun's name and the book he read when he was in third grade, and it's real kinds of memories. He has an amazing memory. He is so incredibly smart. I feel like I am back in college every day. There's always a reading list. He's always coming in and quoting. He's reading Henry Miller and the Tropic of Cancer right now. You know, I think a number of us know when he was on his Roman Empire kick. But he has an amazing ability to sort of pull these books and things out, and there's a reason when he goes to his bookshelf and pulls something out, he's actually connecting a thought that in something he's doing that is, of course, mysterious to those of us who don't have that kind of intellect, but becomes apparent as he weaves things into his discussions and his decision making. He's really, I feel like I really am in a college course. And the other thing that I think I've seen that I didn't really know, and is not something one shows, which is I think good because he's very private, is he's a very sensitive person about other people. You know, he has a way that is funny and ironic and smart, and he certainly is very direct. And I look at Elizabeth, and you know, she and I know that often we've been told. Actually, me far more than Elizabeth. Nancy, you don't know shit from Shinola about this, and he's right most of the time. But he's actually very sensitive about people. He still has lunch with the people he went to St. Ignatius High School with. Tries to do it once a month. Can't always make it. He called the nun who taught him in elementary school, who's in her 90s, who's in the hospital. He just does things like that, and people don't talk about that kind of thing. But the only reason I mention it is because it is, I think, different than we would see him, because he's a very private person, and he doesn't reveal those sides of him. But he has a lot of that Catholic boy caring in him still.
So we're going to get to questions in just a minute, but what is with this Chris Christie smackdown?
Oh.
What is going on there?
Well, you know, he actually, I think, tries not to get drawn into stuff like that, but he was called a retread, an old guy, an old retread. So, you know, he made it, Joe. He was at a big labor meeting, and so he knew that was good red meat for that, and it became viral. And Christie keeps coming back with no humor and wants to keep the fight alive. So,
all right. Well, we traditionally end the conversation part of She Shares by asking you, for the benefit of the young women leaders who are here today, if you could look back and give your 16 or 17-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't eat so much sugar. And keep friendships alive. Know that there are always circles of relationships and friendships and people that come across your path, and keep those embers burning if you can. I do regret that there are people in my life that were very important to me, that I cared about, or that I was so impressed and respected so much that I have lost contact with over the years, and I regret that. So I think maybe those two pieces come to mind first of all.
Thank you. So we're going to take a few minutes. Nancy's been gracious enough to stay for a few questions, and I know we've barely touched the surface of things we could talk about, but if anybody has a question, just raise your hand, and Angela will bring the microphone to you. And I see a hand. Donna, take it away. Just so everybody can hear.
Nancy, when you worked for Gray Davis, you were in a very powerful position. You got sick. And you didn't know you were sick, as I remember. How did that experience change your life moving forward? I mean, did you change? What'd you learn from that? I did.
Sorry about that. I did get sick. I had ovarian cancer, which is a very difficult cancer to detect, and I ended up being lucky. And I listened to my body, and so that's just, it's not the answer to your question, but it is something I believe passionately about, and women particularly need to do that. Everybody who goes through some kind of event, whether it's an illness or a family member's illness or a death or a change in life circumstances, always say that it changed me and I'm going to change my life. And I have thought those same thoughts too, and I certainly made me aware of the fragility of life. But I'm also reminded that I was on a course after that I was going to drink green tea every day, and I would never relent on this, and I was going to, and you forget. And so I did learn lessons during that time, but it's really easy to let the lessons get lost. And so I think one of the things that I did learn is that you actually have to work all the time at living the lessons you've learned in life, and that you can't just say you had this thing happen to you, whatever it is, and it's changed me and now I will be a changed person. You have to work on it, just like you have to work on marriages and parenting and all. You have to work on keeping those lessons alive.
Right, thank you. I saw another hand, please.
One is there's a lot of different opinions on how involved the governor's wife is in shaping policy, and I'd love your comments on that. And then what keeps you up at night? Oh, Michelle Steve St. John's.
Yes.
Thanks.
First, last question first. Right now, Prop 30, because it's so important. That keeps me up. The first question, Ann Gus Brown is an indispensable partner in our office. She is actually not as involved right now because she is working so hard on the campaign and trying to raise money for Proposition 30 so that we actually have a real shot at passing it. And so she's separating that out of the governor's office completely and really focusing on that. But she is an incredible woman. She doesn't actually like to do a lot of public speaking, and she's a behind-the-scenes kind of person. That's how she's been in her career, but she was a total added bonus. And one of the reasons I took this job was not only because I was so attracted to the idea of working for somebody who was so smart, so committed to doing the right thing, and had this unique moment in time, but the team that he had, the small team that he had around him, including Ann, was a real pull for me, because there were people, everybody sort of devoted to trying to keep on the right course, a real no-drama team. We're a very no-drama team. We're trying to keep it that way. And that is such a blessing, because whether it's a corporation or and I had lots of drama in my last job, and I was so glad, to join a place where everybody was trying to row together, and Ann is right there with us.
Good. All right, let's see. We had a couple of questions from our Facebook community, and one of them,
Wow.
Yes, this just in. This one is about energy, and specifically how the president plans to rely less on fossil fuels, more on natural gas. And this questioner wants to know, what is the governor's plan to promote California-made clean energy?
Well, we could talk for hours about
we could talk
this,
for
but
2 minutes.
But he's been since he was governor the last time, a huge proponent of renewable energy, solar and geothermal, wind, and he continues to be. And we've got a team in our office that's really focused on making renewable energy in California a reality. We're going to be the first state that has over a third of our energy portfolio all renewable by 2020. He also is very mindful that we need to have a diverse energy supply, and so he's been supportive at the PUC for clean natural gas plants, and he's going to continue to push to do everything we can to have a clean energy supply, because he, unlike most elected officials in the country, actually believes that we should be worried about, talking about, and doing something about climate change.
Great, great. Well, I think we've wrapped up our time here. Thank you, Nancy, so much for taking the time. And I just want to tell you all that our next She Shares meeting is going to be Monday, December 3rd. And we're delighted to be able to host Jennifer Siebel Newsom, who is a filmmaker, and many of you know about her film Misrepresentation, which is a really wonderful, insightful, penetrating look at the portrayal of women in the mass media. And so I hope you can all come and join us on December 3rd. And on your way out today, we have set up a social media station, and would love for you to take just 30 seconds. Our Facebook page is up, and you can either suggest a speaker for our next year's series, or you could let us know what your takeaway was from Nancy's wonderful advice and insight today, or you could really let us know just about anything, advice for young women leaders. Anyway, just take a second, log on to write a little comment on our Facebook page, and we're going to choose somebody who takes the time to comment to be our guest compliments of She Shares at our next meeting. So thank you all very, very much.
Great.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
You're great.